Hey everyone, welcome to our Week 18 NFL Best Bets video. So we'll be looking at the spreads, money lines, and the over-under for every single game for Week 18 of the NFL football season. This is the very last week of the regular season. We don't have any Thursday night games, any Monday night games. We just have 2 Saturday games, and then the rest are all on Sunday because you have the national championship for college football Monday night. But there's some pretty meaningful games. So we have some teams that have already locked down their seeding, so they really don't have anything to play for, so they'll be rolling out their second and third strings. But we have some teams fighting over those final playoff spots, fighting for better seeding, so they definitely have a lot to play for on Saturday and Sunday. But let's get started with our Sunday Best Bets video for Week 18. So kicking things off, Saturday, January 6, 2024 at 4:30 p.m. on ESPN, we have the 9-7 Pittsburgh Steelers versus the 13-3 Baltimore Ravens here. Pittsburgh comes into this game, they are favored by 3, and the over-under is 34.5, so a pretty low-scoring game. The Steelers have a real shot, if they win this game, to actually clinch and potentially make the playoffs. So they have a lot to play for here. Now the Ravens have already clinched the number 1 seed. So they're not going to gain anything by rolling out their starters this game. So Lamar Jackson, who is probably the MVP right now, he's not going to be playing this game. They're going to be arresting pretty much their whole starting defense. So they're going to be rolling out their second and their third strings here versus the Steelers. Steelers have obviously had quarterback issues the whole year. Rudolph, Pickett, they're not the answer. But they have a really good defense led by TJ Watt. Looking at the team stats here, you have the Pittsburgh Steelers coming in. They average 17.9 points per game. Baltimore, 29.6 points per game. That's the top 5 offense. And on defense, Pittsburgh gives up 19.6 points per game. Baltimore gives up 16.4 points per game. But obviously, Pittsburgh is the favorite because they will be playing the backups for Baltimore. I have Pittsburgh getting the win here. 20-17 stacks actually coming in at the push as of right now. I wouldn't be surprised if this line does come down. It has been moving down throughout the week, but I have them coming in at the push, and I'm also going with the over as of right now. The next game that we're looking at 8:15 on ESPN, we have the 9-7 Houston Texans versus the 9-7 Colts. Houston comes in here as 1.5 point favorite, so this game is virtually a pick'em, and the over-under is 47.5. These teams are pretty evenly matched, and they're both 9-7. So they're both potentially fighting for potentially the division, because obviously if the Jags lose this week, whoever wins this game would clinch the division. If the Jags win this week, whoever wins this team could potentially make the wild card. So they definitely have something to play for. They want to win this game. If they lose this game, they're basically out. So they just can't lose. They're both in the same division. They both have the same record. Texans, obviously, they have C.J. Stroud. He will be the offensive rookie of the year, having a great season so far. He is finally healthy. He has been pretty banged up the last 2 to 3 weeks. Colts, they have Gardner Minshew at the quarterback position, filling in for Anthony Richardson. They have one of the deepest running back rooms. They have Jonathan Taylor. Zach Moss is back to being healthy. They have Pittman. But the Texans can definitely move the ball. Looking at the team stats on here, you have the Texans coming in. They average 22.1 points per game. Colts 23.6 points per game. And on defense, Houston gives up 20.9 points per game. And the Colts give up 24.4 points per game. So the Colts definitely leave a lot to be desired on the defensive side. This is a really close game. To me, this game is 50-50. It could go either way. Colts have the older, more experienced team that definitely gives them the edge. But I'm actually going to go with the Texans to win this game, winning 24-21. So I have them covering the spread, but I will be going with the under. Like I said, this game is virtually 50-50. I would not be surprised at all if the scores flip-flopped and the Colts win. But as of right now, with C.J. Stroud being healthy, I have the Texans getting the W here. The next game that we'll be looking at, we're now moving on to our Sunday slate of games, Sunday, January 7th, 2024, at 1 p.m. on CBS. We have the 11-6 Cleveland Browns versus the 8-8 Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati comes in here. They are 7-point favorites. The over-under is 37.5. So the Browns obviously did clinch the playoffs, so pretty much they're just fighting for seeding here, but they've already come out and said that they will basically be resting all of their starters. They won't have Flacco playing, Myles Garrett, Cooper, Thornhill, Newsome, Hopkins. Basically, everyone will be out this game. So they'll be rolling out their second and third string here. And Flacco is already technically the third string quarterback because they basically signed him right off the golf course. He's been a massive surprise, having a great season so far. Browns have a really good defense, but they're going to be resting their starters. For the Bengals, they don't have Joe Burrow, but Jake Browning is more than capable of winning this game. He's a really good backup quarterback. He's played really well. He's actually technically, statistically, played better than Joe Burrow so far at this point of the season. They have their pride to play for. So the season's basically lost, but they have weapons. They have Mixon, Chase, they have Drake Browning slinging the ball. They're going to be playing for their pride, trying to go into next season. Looking at the total team stats here, you have the Browns coming in averaging 23.9 points per game, the Bengals 20.9 points per game, and on defense, the Browns give up 20.7 points per game. Cincinnati gives up 23.1 points per game. So I have the Bengals getting the win here, 26-20. So I'm going with that +7, just barely missing the spread, but I will be going with the over here. The next game that we're looking at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 7-9 Minnesota Vikings playing the 11-5 Detroit Lions. Detroit comes in here. They're 3.5-point favorites, and the over-under is 45.5. So the Vikings, obviously, I feel really bad for this team because they lost Kirk Cousins. They were without Jefferson for most of the season, and yet they still put together a pretty decent year. They lost Cousins. They brought in Josh Dobbs. He stunk it up. They're basically down to their third option right now, but they've maintained being competitive. Defense has been playing pretty well. They have been moving the ball vertically. Looking at the Lions, so the Lions had one of the better first halves of the season, kind of fell off the second half. They had a lot of turnovers. Defense started to get scorched every single game, but they've actually played a lot better the last 2 to 3 weeks on both sides of the ball. Looking at the total team stats here, the Vikings come in, they average 20.3 points per game. The Lions average 26.9 points per game. And on defense, Minnesota gives up 20.8 points per game, and Detroit gives up 23.4 points per game. Detroit is locked in for the playoffs, but they are competing for the seeding. So they definitely have something to play for. They want to get the 12 wins. They want to get the better seeding. I have the Lions getting the win here. 27-17, easily covering the spread, but I'm going with the under here. They have a lot to play for. Look for them to get the win here. The next game at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 9-7 Jacksonville Jaguars versus the 5-11 Tennessee Titans. Jacksonville comes in here. They are 4-point favorites, and the over-under is 41.5. Jacksonville was on that 4-game losing streak. They lost Trevor Lawrence. CJ started last weekend, and they finally ended the losing streak. They did get a win, and they needed it because everyone's tied in that division. But if Jacksonville wins this weekend, then they technically win the division, and they know that they're locked in for the playoffs. Good seeding. If they lose, they could potentially get the wild card, but everyone's tied there at the top. They have the tiebreaker. They need to win this game. They're fighting to win this game. If they lose this game, that would mean that they went 1-5 their last 6 games, and that would be a massive letdown. But Trevor Lawrence should be starting this week. He has been practicing, so they should be good to go there. Tennessee, Will Levis has been pretty banged up. They still have Derrick Henry. They still have Hopkins at wide receiver. He's having a really good season so far. And they have a decent defense, so sometimes it plays really well, but it is a Vrabel-led defense, so they always have the potential there. Jacksonville comes in. They average 22.3 points per game. Tennessee, 17.2 points per game. And on defense, they're virtually tied here. Jacksonville gives up 21.4 points per game. Tennessee gives up 21.7 points per game. Jacksonville's defense has been getting scorched, but they actually played really well this past weekend. So they're hoping that they can carry that going forward into the playoffs with a healthy Trevor Lawrence. I have Jacksonville getting the win here, 24-16, covering the spread, but I'm also going with the under here. This is a under-the-radar upset game. So Tennessee, they can be competitive sometimes. They could easily win this game because everything has not been going the Jags' way so far this year, but I do have them getting the win this last regular season game. The next game we're looking at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 6-10 New York Jets versus the 4-12 New England Patriots. New England here, they are 2-point favorites. The over-under is 30.5. So we have two of the worst offenses competing here. So if you have anything else to do, do it. Do not watch this game. This game is probably going to be a really boring game. New York Jets, obviously, Rodgers has been out the whole season. Quarterback issue has been the main issue. It's been a quarterback carousal. They've had 3 different guys starting there. No matter who starts, they're not good. So it's really not going to matter. With the Patriots, they kind of had a similar issue, but Zappy's actually been going off for the last 3 or 4 weeks. So they've actually been scoring some points. A lot of people wanted the Patriots to have a top 3 pick, but Bill Belichick won 4 games. So he kind of won himself out of having a top draft pick. Really doesn't make sense unless the Patriots are preparing to fire him this offseason and he's trying to get as many wins as possible because he's pretty close to Don Shula's record. So that might be why he's trying to win his games, keeping it competitive. If he was staying, then it would make sense for him to throw these games to try to get a top draft pick so that he could draft either Caleb Williams or Drake May or Jaden Daniels. But as of right now, Patriots are still playing competitively. Like we said, Patriots 2-point favorites here. The over-under is 30.5. Looking at the team stats here, you have the Jets coming in. They average 15.7 points per game. Patriots 14.6 points per game. 2 of the bottom 5 offenses competing to see who's going to stink the least. On defense, they actually both have pretty decent defenses. You have the Jets coming in. They give up 22.0 points per game. The Patriots give up 21.8 points per game. I have the Patriots getting the win, as I mentioned before. Belichick is keeping this team competitive. If he is getting fired, he's definitely not trying to throw these games. So they are going to win 21-16. They'll cover the spread, and I'm going with the over. Next game we're looking at 1 p.m. on CBS. We have the 7-9 Falcons versus the 8-8 New Orleans Saints. Saints obviously trying to get over 500. Saints come in here. They are 3-point favorites at home, and the over-under is 42.5. Falcons, just like a lot of teams so far this season, the biggest issue has been the quarterback position. Whether it's Ritter, whether it's Heineke, doesn't matter. They're both not the solution at the quarterback position. They need to get a good quarterback. That's the main thing holding them back. They have really skilled position players. They have Bijan Robinson, London, Pitts. They have the playmakers there. It's just they don't have someone to get them the ball. They don't have someone to lead the offense. And they actually have a pretty decent defense. Saints, their roster is a lot better than an 8-8 roster. They've kind of come on of late the last 2 to 3 weeks, but Carr had a really bad season. Was not pushing the ball vertically down the field. Passing game has looked better recently, and they do have a really good defense. And they still have the motivation. They still have something that they want to play for. Looking at the total team stats here, you have the Falcons averaging 19.0 points per game, Saints 22.1 points per game, and on defense, the Falcons give up 20.3 points per game, and the Saints give up 19.4 points per game. I have the Saints getting the win, 23-17, covering the spread, but I will be going with the under on this game. Both teams have pretty decent defenses. The next game at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 8-8 Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the 2-4 Carolina Panthers. Tampa Bay, 4.5-point favorites here on the road, and the over-under is 36.5. So Tampa Bay is one of those surprise teams so far this season. They were not supposed to be a 500 team, but they put things together. Baker Mayfield is having a comeback season so far, closing in on 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 10 picks. Now, he didn't play well last week, but he is playing the worst team in the NFL by far this weekend. So they definitely can rebound here, get over 500. He's having a really strong season. They have White at running back closing in on 1,000 yards. They have Evans having a great year. They have Godwin, and they have a good defense. They have a good defensive line that gets a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Panthers, let's just be honest, they really don't have anything going for them right now. So Bryce Young has not had a good season, but he is a rookie, so just give him some time. But they don't have any playmakers. I mean, they have Thean, but really outside of him, there's no playmakers, and they have a really bad defense. Looking at the team stats here, you have Tampa Bay comes in. They average 21.2 points per game. Panthers average only 14.8 points per game. On defense, Tampa Bay gives up 20.3 points per game, and the Panthers give up a very high 25.4 points per game. One of the worst professional defenses. A lot of people, though, have this as the upset game. So watch this potentially for one of those end-of-the-season slip-up games. But I have Tampa Bay getting the win pretty handily, winning 27-14, covering the spread, and I'm also going with the over here. They're just obviously the way better team. The next game that we're looking at should be a pretty fun one. At 4:25 p.m. on CBS, we have the 7-9 Chicago Bears versus the 8-8 Green Bay Packers. Green Bay, 3-point favorites here, and the over-under is 45.5. The Bears, Justin Fields did miss a couple games this season, but he's actually had a really strong year. So he kind of picked up where he left off last year. He's been throwing the ball. He's been running the ball. He is obviously the team's leading passer, but he's also their leading rusher, closing in on 700 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground, and having a pretty good season passing the ball. Bears defense has played a lot better the last 2 to 3 weeks. Packers, they did not have a good first half of the season. Second half, though, Jordan Love has really come on. So this is 2 of the better, younger quarterbacks. Jordan Love's closing in on 3,900 yards, 30 passing touchdowns, and 11 picks. 2 pretty strong young teams. Bears, we don't know what they're doing at the quarterback position going forward. This could potentially be Justin Fields' last game starting for the Bears. They could potentially be drafting a quarterback top 5 in the draft. If not, they have Justin Fields and maybe pick up a Marvin Harrison and get him some more playmakers. But they could also potentially trade him too. So we don't know what they want to do going forward, but just enjoy this game while we have it. Looking at the team stats here, the Bears, they average 21.9 points per game. Green Bay, 22.9 points per game. On defense, the Bears give up 22.6 points per game. Green Bay gives up 21.3 points per game. Both of these teams are pretty healthy. This game could potentially be really close also. This is 2 really good teams, 2 young quarterbacks, but I have Green Bay getting the win here. They're just a better rounded team. I have them winning 27-20, covering the spread, and I'm also going to go with the over here. Our next game at 4:25 p.m. on Fox, we have the 8-8 Denver Broncos versus the 7-9 Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders 3-point favorites here, over under 37.5. The Denver Broncos, there's really not much to say there. This team's a complete disaster from the top to the bottom. So from the ownership to the coach Sean Payton, through the quarterback position with them benching Russell Wilson over contract problems, bringing in Stidham. It's a complete disaster. It does not look good from the locker room side. It does not look good from the public side. I don't know if that move is going to work out technically, but it just shows how unstable the locker room is as of right now. But this team actually has a pretty decent roster, but it's being ran completely out of control. Maybe they'll right the ship for this week. With the Raiders, obviously they fired Josh McDaniels. They have Pierce, who stepped in as the interim coach. They have something to play for. So the Broncos show instability as of right now. The Raiders show heart. They're wanting to play for Pierce because they want him to get the permanent head coaching job. So they have the motivation factor there. They actually have a pretty good roster. Quarterback position has a lot of question marks, but they have Josh Jacobs. They have Adams at wide receiver, and they have a pretty good defense. Looking at the team stats here, you have the Broncos coming in averaging 21.4 points a game, but obviously that was with Russell Wilson at quarterback. Raiders average 19.1 points per game. On defense, Denver gives up 24.1 points per game. Las Vegas gives up 19.8 points per game. Raiders have the better team. They have the motivation factor. That's why they're the favorite. I have the Raiders getting the win here, 23-13, covering the spread, but I'm going to go with the under. The next game we're looking at 4:25 p.m. on CBS, we have the 11-5 Philadelphia Eagles versus the 5-11 New York Giants. Eagles, 5.5-point favorites here. The over-under is 41.5. The Eagles have, just like the Jags, they've been a complete disaster the last 6 to 7 games. They were riding a really long losing streak, finally got a win. They come in this past weekend and they lose in a shootout to the Cardinals. So things have completely fallen off the rails. Their great offensive line has disappeared. Hurts has turned the ball over constantly, and their defense gets lit up every single week. So they have a lot of issues. So there's not one specific thing causing it. It could be coaching, could be player-wise, could be health-wise with Hurts, but there's a lot of different problems. So, and it's not like they won last weekend and they're starting to right the ship. They're going into the playoffs playing like crap. So they definitely want to get the win here. They want to get a strong win. They need to play their starters this week. You don't want to go into the playoffs playing like garbage. Get your starters in there. Try to get some of those kinks worked out. But the Eagles definitely are the favorites here. And they have one of the best offensive rosters in all football. They have Hurts, Swift, Brown, Smith. They have the playmakers there. It's just things haven't been clicking for the last 2 months. Looking at the total team stats here, the Eagles average 26.4 points per game. Pretty decent offense, and the Giants average 14.9 points per game. But obviously, they lost Daniel Jones, but he wasn't very good. And they've been playing with Tommy DeVito, who's kind of lit a spark under this team. And they've been somewhat competitive for the last month. And on defense, the Eagles give up an awful 25.1 points per game, and the Giants give up 24.8 points per game. I have the Eagles getting back in the win category this weekend, winning 24-20. So I'm going with that plus 5.5. They're not covering the spread, but I am going with the over. So I have them playing better. But the reason they're not covering the spread is they got to play the starters first half, need to get them warmed up, work the kinks out. But I see them resting their guys third and fourth quarter because you don't want to take the chance of them actually getting hurt. But I do have them winning this game. Next game we're looking at 4:25 p.m. on Fox. We have the 8-8 Seattle Seahawks versus the 4-12 Arizona Cardinals. Seattle 3-point favorites here. The over-under is 47.5. Seahawks, obviously, they are a very efficient team. Geno Smith either has some good games, has some bad games. Sometimes their defense plays well. Sometimes their defense gets lit up. So it's kind of a 50-50 factor, just which Seahawks team shows up. But when Geno Smith plays well, he obviously looks pretty good. And they always have Metcalf at the wide receiver position. So if this game gets close, they have a number one target they can use to win one-possession games. Cardinals coming off of that really good win versus the Eagles. Kyler Murray, he missed a lot of time when he was hurt. But since he's been back, he is starting to get better each and every single week. And they also have Connor at the running back position. Looking at the team stats here, Seattle averages 21.4 points a game. Cardinals 19.4 points a game. On defense, Seattle gives up 23.9 points a game. And the Cardinals just get gassed every single weekend. They give up 27.1 points a game. So one of the worst defenses. But I have the Seahawks getting the win here. So I have them winning 30-24, covering the spread, and I'm going with the over here. This could be a team where the Cardinals ride going into the offseason pretty hot. So they definitely could win this game. But Seattle needs to get the ship right, and they need to finish this season over 500 going into next year. The next game we're looking at 4:25 p.m. on CBS, we have the 10-6 Kansas City Chiefs versus the 5-11 LA Chargers. Chargers are the favorites here, 3.5-point favorites, over under 35.5. So this game, Vegas has it being a pretty low-scoring game. Chiefs did clinch the playoffs, so they'll be resting their starters on both sides of the ball. Mahomes, Kelsey, they're not going to play this weekend. There's no reason to risk them getting hurt. Chiefs have a really good defense. That's their main saving grace because the offense has not looked well the whole season. They've dropped a lot of passes outside of Kelsey, but they do have a top 5 defense. They get a lot of pressure. But the starters probably won't be playing this game, so they'll have their second and third string in for the majority of the game. Chargers are just a complete disaster. Herbert got hurt, coach fired, Williams hurt, Eckler hurt, Allen hurt. They've been banged up, so I guess you could say they have their pride to play for. But this is not a bad roster, but it's a banged-up roster, and it's a roster that hasn't been used the correct way. But they are the favorites here because they are playing the backups for the Chiefs. Looking at team stats here, Kansas City averages 22.4 points per game. Chargers 20.9 points per game. On defense, Chiefs give up 17.6 points per game, and the Chargers give up 24.1 points per game. So this is a hard game to gauge because Chargers aren't very good. Chiefs have the backups in. We haven't seen them start their backups, so how's that really going to look? I'm going to take the Chiefs backups over the Chargers starters. So I have the Chiefs getting the win here, 17-14. So I'm going to go with the plus 3.5. I still have the Chiefs winning, but I'm also going to go with the under. The next game we're going to be looking at is going to be a massive battle of the backups. At 4:25 p.m. on Fox, the 9-7 LA Rams versus the 12-4 San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco comes in here 4-point favorites. Over-under is 40.5. So both teams have clinched the playoffs. Both teams are resting their starters. So the Rams, they're not going to have Stafford playing. They're not going to have Williams playing. They're not going to have Nakua, Kupp playing. So really good offense, but no one's going to be playing there. So we don't know what to make of what they're going to roll out. Same thing for the 49ers. So Brock Purdy and company will not be starting this game. There's no reason for either of these teams to take the chance of their starters getting hurt. So both teams will have their backups out. So basically, everything that we've seen so far this year doesn't really matter this game because that's not going to be the rosters that we see on the field. Looking at the team stats here, the Rams average 23.9 points per game. San Francisco 29.4 points per game, top 5 offense. On defense, Rams give up 22.3 points per game. San Francisco gives up 17.3 points per game. So the stats don't necessarily matter because that's not going to be the teams playing. But the 49ers are probably the best top-to-bottom complete roster in the NFL. So I'm going to be going off the fact that their second and third string should be better than the Rams' second and third string. So I have the 49ers winning 24-17, covering the spread, and also going with that over. Next game at 4:25 p.m. on Fox, the 11-5 Dallas Cowboys versus the 4-12 Washington Commanders. Dallas is 13-point favorites here. Over-under is 46.5. So Vegas has Dallas beating the crap out of Washington, and deservedly so. So Dallas has a really good team, top 5 offense, top 5 defense. Dak Prescott having a really good year so far, closing in on 4,300 yards, 32 touchdowns, and only 8 picks. They have Pollard at running back. They have CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver, closing in on 1,700 yards. So he's lighting it up, and they have a really good defense. Washington, they don't really have anything going for them. They had Sam Howell. He's the most sacked, most hit, most pressured quarterback. This team is really bad. Their defense is god-awful. So they get lit up every single week. They can't not get lit up, basically. And Ron Rivera will be fired the second this game ends. But he should have been fired 2 years ago. But they're going to write that here because he is a defensively minded guy, and they have the worst defense in all of professional football. Looking at team stats here, Dallas averages 29.4 points per game, top 5 offense. Washington, 19.9 points per game. And on defense, Dallas gives up 19.1 points per game, a top 5 defense. And Washington gives up a whopping 30.0 points per game, which is actually down from last week, but it's still the worst by far. I have Dallas getting the win here, 28-17. So not covering the spread, and I'm also going with the under. Now, I'm not going with the spread because I have the Washington being really competitive. They don't have anything to play for. It's just I have Dallas pulling their starters early because they don't need to blow out Washington. That's not going to help them. They just want to get better seeding, and they want to go into the playoffs running a pretty hot winning streak. And our final game of the weekend at 8:20 p.m. on NBC, the 10-6 Buffalo Bills versus the 11-5 Miami Dolphins. Buffalo is a very slight 2.5-point favorites here, and the over-under is 48.5. So Buffalo, obviously, they've won the last few games. They've been playing pretty hot, but their last few wins have been pretty close versus not the best teams. But they do have a really good offense, and they have a really good defense. Their biggest issue has been getting them both on the same page for the game. So when the offense does well, the defense plays poorly. When the defense plays well, the offense has a lot of turnover. So it's just getting everything to click right. But once it does, they have the weapons. They have Josh Allen. They have Cook. They have Diggs. So they have the playmakers there, and they have the defense. For the Dolphins, this is probably the most injured team right now. As of right now, obviously they have a great offensive roster. The number 1 offense, they have Tua, Mostert, Achin, Hill, Waddle, Berrios. Lots of playmakers, but Waddle's been banged up for the last 2 to 3 weeks. Missed the last game. He has been practicing, so he might be playing this game, hopefully. Hill, he just had a fire at the guy's house, but as of right now, he is still playing. But their defense is so injured, and their offensive line is really injured. But Miami plays really well at home, so they do have that going for them. Team stats here, the Buffaloes average 26.9 points per game, Miami 30.1, and on defense, Buffalo gives up 18.6 points per game, Miami gives up 23.1 points per game. So Miami has the better offense. They are at home, play really well there, but Buffalo has the more rounded team. If the Dolphins were fully healthy, I would honestly pick them to win this game. As of right now, though, there's just too many question marks, so that kind of forces me to have to go with the Bills. I have the Bills winning 27-23 and clinching the division for the 4th year, covering the spread, and I'm going with the over. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins win. It's just There's too many question marks right now. So that's our breakdown of the best bets for Week 18, the final regular season weekend. Hit that like button and subscribe. If you have any comments, drop them below, and I'll make sure to respond. Thanks.